Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and tonight's show is called Wednesday Night News, A Nation in Crisis. And boy, is this nation in crisis. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, everything you hear, and everything you see reeks of crisis and desperation. That's not a good position to be in, especially when you call yourself the world's only superpower, the hyperpower, and the global hegemon. These are telltale signs that America and the American empire is in total decline, and they are imploding from within with the economic stench and rot that we see festering every day across America. Now, this is an impromptu show that we're doing for you all due to the fact that I got my schedule a little mixed up. I have to do some things. I have to take care of a few things this week. So this week we'll be going in and out of the normal schedule that we would have for you. You know, a lot of the times we have the 11:30 or 11:45 a.m. and then we adjust it to some of our guests. Well, tonight we're doing the show because of time and opportunity. So we'll be doing this week or whatever. And so just bear with us. And we just want to thank you for joining us for the most powerful show, broadcast, and podcast on YouTube and on the web, period, bar none, if I do say so myself. But again, I'm just looking at the manifestation of the decline and fall of America. And I just shook my head. You know, America has become so desperate in her quest to maintain her position in power and influence globally. She went from provoking war to, well, she's still provoking war, to demonizing leaders, to now we see she was saying that Russia was in such a bind that, and even if you go on YouTube and you go on different platforms, you'll see where they'll take what is happening on the Ukrainian part and they'll flip it to Russian. You see a line of tanks destroyed, Russian tanks destroyed by the Ukrainian forces. Russia is so out of ammunition that they're using shovels. I mean, this is crazy. When all of the information shows us and points towards this being the exact opposite. This is why you hear me constantly tell you that this is in the Western world and in America specifically. This is bizarro politics, where up is down is up, in is out is in, right is wrong, and wrong is right. The level of disinformation and propaganda has beat any period in American history. The propaganda is unreal, you know. So they were talking about Russia is in such a condition that it is begging and pleading for weapons from Iran. Russia needs weapons from China. Russia's getting, remember that? Russia is begging China for weapons and ammunition. Then it went to North Korea, and now Egypt, of all places, Egypt is supposed to be now supplying rockets to the Russian military. I mean, it is going from the crazy, mundane, and now to the just psychotic. And I wonder if these policymakers and these propagandist leaders, I wonder, do they sit down and take time to think about their policies before they implement them or give orders to execute these policies? Because any sane or rational person that looks at these policies or even hears the policies being announced or put into play will say, man, even a third grader or even a fifth grader could see through this stuff. But it shows you the level of contempt and disrespect that they have for the average person. because no sane person, no person that has respect for your intelligence will try to put these lies over on you. Okay? Now think about it. Egypt, which buys weapons from Russia, I must add, and buys weapons from the United States, I might add, is now selling Russia weapons. Even as Russia is not only shellacking and giving a beat down to Ukraine and the entire Western world. Now they are strapped for missiles. Now they're strapped for ammunition, and they need to go to a nation that they sell weapons to, Egypt, for Egypt to produce and sell weapons to it. The insanity, I'm telling you, I mean, this is on a level unheard of by the West. And I believe that when you become so inebriated on what you used to be and the power you used to wield and the influence that you used to have and the wealth that you used to possess, and as you see it going down the tube, you're just taking anything, throwing it up against the wall to see if it sticks. But I want to tell the, whether it's in Congress, whether it's in the White House, or whether it's behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, you can put sprinkles on body waste. It does not make it ice cream. It is still body waste nonetheless. Okay? You can put that body waste on an ice cream cone and put sprinkles on it. It still does not make it ice cream. No matter how you jazz it up, it is still body waste, if you understand what I'm saying, if you get my drift. So the things, excuse me, the things that should be basic is not so basic. Common sense is not so common. And all while she's doing this, America is at home. Now, mind you, she continues to announce aid packages for we know that it's for the military industrial complex, but she continues to announce aid packages for Ukraine. She continues to arm Israel as Israel continues to provoke in the Middle East. She continues to do these things. And at home, there's a civilized, so-called civilized nation. Her civilization is being ripped to shreds with poverty and homelessness and hunger and ethnic strife and culture wars and race divisions and wealth divides. That is not a security issue that matters. Those things are not security issues that need an immediate her immediate attention. Those are things that can be pushed to the back. But Ukraine, 8,000 to 10,000 kilometers away, or even more, is an immediate threat to America's strategic interests. China, which lies thousands and thousands of miles away, is an immediate threat to America's security interests. But the growing strife, dissatisfaction with the political system, the justice system, the wealth divide, all of this stuff is not an immediate security issue for the politicians. This shows you how detached they are and have become from reality and what's really happening on the ground. Okay? It's unreal. Let's go to something. Let's read something. Let's go to one of my favorite blogs to get some of the news, the Economic Collapse blog. An article came out 2 days ago called "How Would You Fix This Colossal Multi-Trillion-Dollar Mess?" And I've never read the article, but we'll go to it together, okay? Give me a second. Let me click on it. I hate these little ads popping up. Okay. And Michael Snyder writes, everyone can see the slow motion train wreck that is unfolding right in front of our eyes, but no one has a plan to stop it. Unfortunately, from a short-term perspective, I don't know if there is anything that can be done to prevent the commercial real estate bubble from imploding. Vacancy rates are surging to historic highs all over the nation, and without sufficient rental income, many property owners will be forced to default. Stop right there. And this will have effects throughout the economy. But that is not a major security issue that Congress and the president and the powers that be should focus on. It should be arming Ukraine and letting Ukraine fight the proxy war against Russia to the last Ukrainian. Because the leaders of the leadership have become so outdated and so detached from reality, they have become almost as Samson in a way. You know how Samson, he didn't care about seeing the future. He was so enraged with what he was going through and who did that to him. He was willing to push down the foundations of the building in which he was in, the Colosseum that he was in, and he was willing to die and take everybody with him because he was that enraged. That is the mind of the lunatic. That is the mind of the Western world, especially the American leadership. They are now pushing the world towards global thermonuclear war because they can no longer impose their will, dictates, and policies on enemies or allies alike. That's insane. But it is real. And you can hear it when they talk. It's always everybody else's fault. And everybody else is being belligerent except America, even though she has thousands of military bases, as I told you once. And when some people say 800 to 1,000, I told you I was listening years back. I was listening to a congressional hearing, and the military was briefing the Congress. I wish I could find that. And they were talking about the bases, the training hubs, the intelligence, the military intelligence centers, and all of this stuff. And it was over 5,000 together, over 5,000. Now, with that said, it is not a violation of other nations' sovereignty for America to put bases on their territory. But don't dare suggest hosting other nations on U.S. soil. The people get outraged. This is an affront to American liberty and American sovereignty, but they don't get that outrage when America just ignores the sovereignty of other nations, right? Are you seeing what I'm saying? And I see the light is going. Hold on, let me see if I can fix this light going in and out. I don't know if it's a program issue or whatever, but just hold on 1 second, okay? Give me 1 second to do this. I think we may have it now. Okay. Excuse me. I think we may have. I turned on another of the lamps or whatever, not the high power light because I can't hardly stand them so close up. But again, that is not an issue when America violates other people's borders, but it's an issue if someone even thinks of violating America's borders. The exceptionalism starts here and it permeates, and then it trickles down into the average person in America. And they don't even hear it or see it when they speak about it or write about it because it's become normal. And normal is not always right. You get some of your most creative and best ideas from not being normal or from what is considered normalcy. Okay, let's go further. I want to hit a point on here. I want to read this with you because I know it has some more stuff in it that we need to talk about. It says, in addition, a giant mountain of commercial real estate mortgages will be up for refinancing over the next few years, and substantially higher interest rates will make refinancing those mortgages exceedingly difficult. We really are facing a perfect storm for the commercial real estate industry, and the fallout is going to be absolutely devastating to U.S. banks. Excuse me. Now, I want you to just breathe a minute. Now, let us think rationally, okay? Now, it always goes back to this. You want to wage war, and wars, plural, with people who are funding your budgets. You want to alienate and continue to provoke nations that uses your currency, which gives you extra perks and more perks than the rest of the world. You are alienating people by sanctioning them, by demonizing them, by provoking them with red button issues. And then at the same time, you want them to feel sorry for you and stay inside of your dollar system. That is insane. Now, according to the dictionary, excuse me, we look at crisis because the name of the show is A Nation in Crisis. We say Wednesday Night News, A Nation in Crisis. According to Google, all right, we're going to go to Google real quick. Google has it as an unstable or crucial time or state of affairs in which a decisive change is impending, especially one with the distinct possibility of a highly undesirable outcome, a financial crisis, the nation's energy crisis, a situation that has reached a critical phase. Now, we have learned what crisis is, right? So we can conclusively say and firmly state with a surety that the American Republic, the American Empire, and the Western world and the Western model of finance, politics, and geopolitics has entered a deep state of what? Crisis. Because all that was mentioned in the definition of crisis, we see right now. Remember, let's go over this again. An unstable or crucial time or state of affairs in a decisive change, which a decisive change is impending. Remember what they say, that the rules-based order is now at a inflection point, right? And they're saying that the global South, led by the BRICS nations, are now building their own financial system outside of the dollar, pound, euro debt-based system. Is that not right? So we're looking at a decisive change that's impending, right? That's pending right now. Let's go further. Especially, meaning when you put the word especially, they're drawing attention to something that is very, very important that you look at. So it says especially one with the distinct possibility of a highly undesirable outcome. Undesirable outcome for who? For the American empire and the rules-based order. Because if nations move outside of the dollar, America cannot have this free for all, just printing debt into infinity. And then the rush out of the dollars will cause a flood back within America and the Western world, which will cause hyperinflation, which means that all of the economies that are strongly connected with America and the debt-based system, England, France, Germany, the Western world, will suffer catastrophic consequences, okay? And so it says, one with the distinct possibility of a highly undesirable outcome. Well, what kind of outcome? Well, the definition goes on to say, a financial crisis, the nation's energy crisis, a situation that has reached a critical phase. Now, since it says that, let's see if we can bear witness to that and see if we can prove that America and the Western world has really entered a crisis. What does it say? A highly undesirable outcome, a financial crisis, the nation's energy crisis, right? A situation that has reached a critical phase. So let's look at it. I want you to listen to this short clip here.
All right, welcome back. So this week, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries announced that it is cutting back oil production. What could go wrong? Right now, the national average price of gas is at $3.60 a gallon. That's down roughly 52 cents from a year ago, but still way higher, more than $1 higher than it was under Trump. Some analysts are predicting that gas prices could remain in the $4 range once the cuts take effect, which could hit your wallet real hard once we get into the summer months when people like to go on vacation and drive around and, take boats out. Heaven forbid, do something fun. So how bad could it get, and what should the administration be doing about it? We've already drawn down the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So here to discuss, let's bring in chief economist and global strategist Peter Schiff. All right, Peter, this is kind of a big deal, and they did it willy-nilly without notifying anybody until the last minute.
Yeah, I think it's a very big deal. Also, it really flies in the face of U.S. policy, which the Fed is trying to bring down inflation. And clearly, this is complicating those efforts, especially given the fact that we're in the midst of another financial crisis. But not only is the supply of oil going to come down, but the supply of money, U.S. dollars used to buy oil, is going up. The Fed has already gone back to quantitative easing to bail out the banks. So we're printing more money, but we're not producing as much oil. And the world is starting to divest itself of U.S. dollars, which will put more downward pressure on the value of the dollar, which, of course, will put more upward pressure on the price of oil.
Right. But I love it when they use fancy terms like quantitative easing or QE. They say, oh, we're going to do some quantitative easing, folks. Nothing. It's just they're just printing money. That's all that is. But President Trump made energy independence part of his game. Like that was his shtick. And he was like, guys, we need to do this. Otherwise, we're going to get taken advantage of, and we're going to be at the whim of whoever is pumping the oil. I mean, can we wind and solarize our way out of this?
No, absolutely not. And it's not just energy independence. We need to be able to produce everything. We're dependent on the rest of the world for everything that we consume because we no longer have the industrial capacity that we once enjoyed because of the policies that have been pursued, for decades. We have too much regulation. We have too high taxes and too much government spending. And so we're not producing what Americans consume. We rely on the rest of the world. But the only reason we're able to do that is because the dollar is the reserve currency, and we may lose that privilege over the next several years, maybe even over the next few months. Who knows?
I mean, that is actually, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show, but this is a huge thing. Let's talk about the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. There's been a lot of talk, and they've been trying to do this for years, trade in gold or stock up in this or that, to try to get trade and replace the U.S. dollar for reserve currency. Even if they tack away 25% of global trade from the dollar, how much does that hurt us domestically?
Well, I think it's going to hurt substantially. And once they start moving in that direction, the pendulum is going to continue to swing. There are all sorts of reasons why the world should want to divest of dollars and no longer depend on the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. But we gave them another one. The Biden administration, in slapping those economic sanctions on Russia, really highlighted how dangerous it is to allow the United States to enjoy this privilege. And so we have scared the world into divesting of dollars, something they should have done anyway because it was in their economic interest to have done so, because it conveys a huge privilege to the United States that has to be paid for by the rest of the world, in that it enables Americans to live beyond our means. We're able to consume all sorts of stuff that we did not produce. And the only reason we could do that is because we could print money that cost us nothing, and our trading partners will accept that instead of actual goods. Well, if we lose that privilege, our standard of living is going to implode.
Peter, I have a minute left. So you walk in, you have 30 seconds with Joe Biden, and he's going to do exactly what you tell him to do. 30 seconds, what do you tell him to do to fix this?
Well, he needs to resign, but he also needs to take Kamala Harris along with him. But, what we need is free market capitalism. We don't need more government solutions to government-created problems. Government has to get out of the way so that free market capitalism can clean up the mess that government created.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like somebody once said that government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the... Oh, it rhymed with Ronald Reagan. Yeah, Peter Schiff, we appreciate you being here, sir. Appreciate all your insight.
Again, a lot of what Peter Schiff said holds true. Some of it, I guess, a little partisan or whatever like that, but the main things of what he was saying holds true. Now, when he was saying that get out of the way and let the free markets. No. That's not going to help the situation. Let's go back to what the beginning of this article. Listen to what Mr. Michael Schneider has to say. Everyone can see the slow motion train wreck that is unfolding right in front of our eyes, but nobody has a plan to stop it. Unfortunately, from a short-term perspective, I don't know if there is anything that can be done to prevent the commercial real estate bubble from imploding. Vacancy rates are surging to historic highs all over the nation, and without sufficient rental income, many property owners will be forced to default. In addition, a giant mountain of commercial real estate mortgages will be up for refinancing over the next few years. And substantially higher interest rates will make refinancing those mortgages exceedingly difficult, which we really are facing a perfect storm for the commercial real estate industry. And the fallout is going to be absolutely devastating for U.S. banks. Now, Gregory Mannarino told me that the situation has become so dire in our talks. He told me these things, that there's nothing that can be done to stop this. As a matter of fact, because of them saying just step out, get the government out of the way, and the free markets will do this in the free market. Maybe there was a time when that was possible. But we have reached a point now that it's sealed. The fate of these people in the financial market, the fate of the economy is sealed. You know, when you seal something, you close it, right? You prepare it to be sent off. And the only way to obtain the goods inside of that letter, you have to rip over the envelope, right? So no matter what they do, it's sealed. If they open it, they're going to tear something. They're going to mess something else up. We have bubbles in every area of the economy: the used car market, the new car market, energy, oil, housing, right? All of these things, retail, all of these areas are close to implosion, right? Let's go to something. Because when I gave you that definition of crisis, at the end of that definition, it says a situation that has reached a critical phase. Now, in the definition for critical phase, at the end of the definition, it says this is the period when those who develop severe disease will become critically ill. All right. You're in that state then where the doctor can no longer do anything to help you, because the situation has become so dire that, excuse me, my lantern, one of my lanterns fell off of here. I'm sorry. The situation has become so dire that there's nothing that the doctors and the medical staff can do. So they say, listen, you've reached this stage 4 or stage 5 of cancer. You have become critical. So we're going to have to put you, your family won't do not resuscitate. This is what's going on with the financial system. We're close to a do not resuscitate due to the fact of the constant debt. Listen, America, everybody admits this, that America is the largest debtor in the history of the world. There's no arguing over that. That America continues to consume debt. There's no arguing about that. That Europe continues to print money and consume debt like America, right? That England continues to consume and print money and take on what? Debt. Now, if these are facts, because a lot of us, we don't look at facts. We look at scenarios, rosy scenarios. We don't want to look at the reality. When a person shows you who they are, believe them, okay? To ignore that is to your detriment. So When we look at the situation, and I'm trying to pick up the thing that is on, I'm sorry, everybody, but and because this is on the fly, but when we look at the situation that America now faces, how in the world can she pay off her debt? Huh? If her debt 10 years ago, her true debt was $222 trillion. And now every economic barometer has shown us that it has gotten so much worse that in every area of the economy that it is unreal. Unemployment is worse. Housing is worse. Homelessness is worse. The companies taking on more debt. The government taking on more debt. The public taking on more debt. All of this stuff is multiples over what it was 10 years ago. And here is the kicker. The nations who helped to finance America are now considered America's enemies. And she's working to overthrow them, destabilize them, or to make war with them. You tell me, even if the government stepped out of the way, how can she recover from that? I got to go back to something. See, I like to prove points. So we're going to go back to something. I want to play a clip for you, a short clip, but I got to go back to something to show you just how severe the debt crisis in America was 10 years ago. Because I heard what Peter Schiff said, and he's telling you what he believes. But I'm gonna tell you facts, okay? Well, he's telling you facts too, but it's we see a little conjecture at that. But I want you to let's see if we can pull up the clip. Oh yeah, listen to this. This is over 10 years ago, and everything has gotten so much worse, multiples. And let us not forget the derivative market. I want you to understand this clip that I'm about to play for you shows you at the time that the global economy was, I think, was $45 trillion. Then America had more debt than the entire globe. Then, listen to me good. Listen to me again, very good. Back then, America had more debt than the entire globe. And when I say the entire globe, I'm talking about the entire GDP of the planet. So if that is the case, and things are on a multiples worse than it was then, and not only has America taken on more debt, but the globe has taken on more debt. How can stepping away or even involving yourself in it stop what has been ordained? We have to use common sense when we're doing these things. But I want you to listen to what this guy says, okay? So pay close attention.
Lawrence Kotlikoff, economics professor at Boston University. It's a pleasure to have you with us today,
It's great to be with you and great to be in Russia.
So you're the one who states that America is broke and is even in a worse state than Greece and Ireland. How so? What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, we economists look at all the bills the government has to pay, and in the U.S. case, we have enormous bills that have been kept off the books that are not official debts, but they're very real. For example, paying me my social security benefits, my old age pension, that's a real obligation. It's not part of official government debt, but it's, very important because there are 78 million baby boomers who are going to get these social security payments, and in addition, medical payments from the government. If you look at all those payments, they're about $3 trillion a year. So we have these huge bills. Nobody has thought about paying for them. And Congress and the presidents over the years have just focused on official debt and basically have not told the public about these big bills.
You said the amount of the fiscal gap in the United States is, in your estimation, $222 trillion. Is this right?
$222 trillion. If you take.
This is like an astonishing number, which is like 3 times the world's GDP. This is more than what the world makes.
20 times higher than the official debt in the hands of the public, which is 11 trillion. So if you add all these spending obligations into the distant future, and you compare them with all the taxes, and you include in the spending all the interest payments and principal payments on the debt, on the official debt, you have 222 trillion in present value. Now this is 12% of GDP on an ongoing basis. In other words, we need to get 12% more of GDP, either in tax increases or spending cuts, in order to have the fiscal gap be zero. We're doing far too little too late. It's like operating on a person with cancer and you say, well, there's a big tumor here. We're just going to take a little bit out today and we'll come back in 5 years and we'll take out some more. But maybe in 5 years the patient is dead because the tumor got bigger. So this is why we are in worse shape than Greece. And Greece, it's about 10% of GDP they need on an ongoing basis. We need 12%. Italy, it's about 5%. Germany, it's about 5%. So when you look at it from this perspective, it's a whole different story than when you look just at the official debt. Because these governments are making choices, word choices, about what to call official obligations and what to call unofficial.
So are they intentionally hiding the
They're
enormity
intentionally
of the
hiding
problem?
this. They've been spending, in our country, 6 decades running a massive Ponzi scheme, taking from young people, giving to old people, and then telling the young people, don't worry, you'll get yours when you're old. Promising pensions, promising healthcare benefits. And, you know, this is happening in all countries. Even Russia has a pension system, but it doesn't seem to be in as bad a shape as ours in terms of paying for its benefits in the future.
But I mean, this number, 222 trillion, I mean, what exactly is this, where is this money going? Who is spending it? I mean, certainly not the average American. What is it, like the 1% of the super rich, the military needs? Where's it going?
Where's all the spending?
Yeah.
Well, you have, again, you've got a lot of old people now. They're getting very high benefits, about $30,000 per person. It's scheduled to go up to about $40,000 when I retire, which will be about 15 years. So you can see that we're just very generous to the old people in our country.
What do you suggest? Like cut spending, raise taxes? That would be suicidal to any American president.
Well, we have to be adults. If we're running the country, we have to act like adults because our main responsibility as adults is to make sure our kids have a good future. So we have to reduce the growth rate of the benefits to the elderly. And that requires cutting the growth, being much more careful about how much we spend on health care, because it's been the health care benefits have been growing at twice the growth rate of per capita GDP for 40 years. These are the government health care benefits for the elderly. So it can't continue because it's going to kill the country. So we have a huge problem. It's being hidden. It's not being described and discussed, disclosed. And we're in very bad shape.
You just mentioned that you need to take care of the future generations. Clash of generations is the term you use to describe what future awaits for American children paying up the debts of their fathers. But the United States, when you look at it, it really has lived on debt ever since World War II, and increasingly so in the past 30 years. And they have somehow managed not to collapse, and they have no problem getting new debt. Why do you think that the new generation won't be able to manage it?
Well, over time, the official debt will become bigger and bigger as a share of GDP. And at some point, the Chinese and other people will stop lending us money. And our interest rates will go up dramatically. We'll have a bond market collapse. And at that point, the deficit will get even bigger. The official debt will accumulate even more rapidly. And our government is also printing a lot of money to pay for these bills. So inflation can also take off very quickly. So I see big problems, and they may not be in 30 years, they may be in 5 years or 2 years, that the Chinese and other people start to understand how bad the situation is. And then we'll be in the situation of Greece, where people won't lend us money.
And that's what America fears. Now, back to that article. At the end of that article, at the end of the first paragraph of what we were reading, it says, we really are facing a perfect storm for the commercial real estate industry, and the fallout is going to be absolutely devastating for U.S. banks. Now, according to the dictionary of absolute, it means complete, total, right? And devastating means highly destructive or damaging, destructive, ruinous, disastrous, catastrophic, calamitous, shattering, shocking, traumatic, overwhelming, crushing. So now we get an understanding of just how bad things are. And this is why America is doing everything that she can to try to provoke and stoke wars. You say, well, if she provokes and stoke wars, the people will just move out of the dollar. But she's hedging her bet on that. If I can cower enough nations, they'll continue to maintain dollar hegemony. Therefore, my debts, all my outstanding debts, won't come in at one time, and I can push back some of these liabilities to prevent the collapse and buy me more time so that I can build up my military to try to conquer the world so that I can never have to pay all my debts. That is the mind of the leadership. You can see it. This is not something that I'm assuming. All one has to do is look at the policies and look at the actions of the people and then listen to their rationale. Because the leadership's rational thinking is actually irrational to rational people. Okay? Now, they understand this. So, understanding this, let me play a little short clip that goes along with what the guy was telling you about. The nations were going to start moving away from the U.S. debt. They were going to start just saying, you know what? I'm done with this. I am absolutely done with this. And then America would have to deal with her debt, unfunded liabilities, her constant spending and printing of money. All of that will come home. The chickens will come home to roost. And this is something that the elite knows. And they're trying to fight like hell to prevent from happening. As a matter of fact, let us go into something. We'll see this in just a few clips right here. Little short clips, because I want to come back to what this professor was talking about, because it has everything to do with the stoking of tensions with China, the stoking of tensions with Russia, the stoking of tensions with Iran, the stoking of tensions with Venezuela, the trying to recolonize Africa under the guise of fighting terrorists and terrorism, the trying to and her logo and her motto that she uses to try to rearm and arm to the teeth her military in Asia is freedom of navigation. We are there to be a hedge against China hegemonic ways, even though it's America that is the hegemon that is trying to maintain her position. Because remember, they let the cat out the bag when they said that China wants to supersede us, and China wants to become the number one and the dominant power in Asia. We cannot allow this to happen. America must stay the number one and the most dominant power in Asia. In Asia. They let it out. They let the cat out of the bag. The true reason for the constant provocations and stoking of tensions with China. And this has a great economic component to it, because now the yuan is challenging the dollar. And China is doing it one nation at a time. Currency swap deals, right? Little small nations are, okay, we need financing. Okay, you get financing through the AIIB bank, the Asian Infrastructure Bank. Okay, you can't get it from there. We'll give you funding through the BRICS Bank. Okay, you can't do that. I guess you know what we'll do. We'll hook you up with Union Pay. And that way you'll be outside of the credit system of the West. And then you can get finance from either us, Russia, Iran, or anyone else. So they're doing it with one institution at a time. And America is now seeing this. And this is causing her to frantically flail in the economic waters, and she thinks that she's swimming the breaststroke, but the entire world of onlookers see her drowning. Okay? But listen, let's go to some. Let me play this clip. Where is and the whole world knows it. The whole world knows it. Let's see where it's at right here. See if I download it. Ha! I want you to listen to this, okay?
For once, at least IMF has been warning on time about the fragility underlying the entire financial system, which is pointed out in the article in Financial Times, especially targeting the issue of policy, so policy which is made by politics, to try to think what may happen in the banking system, in the credit system, and therefore to take action before this happens, not like it happened in 2008, that they waited too long and then it was a real catastrophe. So, but the wording is quite clear, basically saying central banks are doing their job. We have stabilized the financial system. The inflation is still there, and it is more than we expected, and it will last longer than expected, so probably until 2025 at least. But what is not said in the IMF is that the real problem for the dollar and the financial system is still dollar-centered, is the diminishing flow that comes from the swaps in dollars. Therefore, this is a consequence of a number of states that have decided to denominate their trade in other currencies that are not dollar. And if this increases further, this will diminish the capacity of the dollar to refinance itself and therefore fragilize the entire financial structure. This is what is not said in the IMF, but what I understand from their words.
That is critical there. The IMF talked about they had to revise the global GDP, the global economy. They didn't tell you why. They didn't give you specifics. But these people are looking on, oh, okay, I see why. Because most of the system is denominated in dollars. Now, we see nation after nation fled the dollar. So now America doesn't have the financing that she once had to prop up herself and prop up her institutions and her allies. So now they have to do a real appraisal of what's going on and try to stop other nations from fleeing the dollar. This is what this guy just said in layman's terms. So he said, even though the IMF didn't openly say it, this is what we hear in her words. And of the IMF, they see what's going on. I'm not making none of this stuff up. As a matter of fact, I want to even take you back to a time when around the same time I played you part one of the clip of that professor of economics. This happens around the same time or whatever like that. And the man who coined the phrase full spectrum dominance in his talk about the American empire and its unquenchable bloodlust for total global hegemony and total domination of the globe, Mr. F. William Engdahl. This is what he had to say back then about the state of American affairs and global affairs, okay? You have to pay close attention to this because this is very pertinent and it is very important that you understand the connection of all of these provocations, these wars, and what is going on in the currency markets, the debt markets, and what is going on with the international trade and commerce between nations, okay? All right? And it reached this level then. So if it reached this level that you're about to hear then, and all of the economic barometers have deteriorated for America and the West, how bad do you really believe the situation is? Okay, so pay close attention. And he used a key phrase. Not even Jesus Christ could reverse what's going on. It has become so bad in the Western rules-based order and the Western-led financial system that there's no way out of this situation that we now find ourselves in. The only thing that'll see you through is getting yourself closer to God and trying to live your life better. You think right, you think better, you speak better, you live better, do better, and maybe God will have mercy on you through what is coming. Okay, I want you to listen closely to what this guy's saying.
Joining us today is best-selling author and economist William Engdahl. He's been writing on issues of energy, politics and economics for more than 30 years. Thank you for joining us today. Recently, we've seen several American banks beat forecasts and record an increase in profit. So is the worst now over for the world's economy?
This is by no means a sign of the end of the crisis. I estimate that we're perhaps 40% into the losses alone in the U.S. real estate sector. And these banks are, when we talk about the banks, we're talking really about at most 7 or 8 huge institutions that are at the center of this crisis, and not tens of thousands of smaller banks in the U.S.
So in your opinion, do you think it's too soon to be optimistic?
It's absolutely too soon to be optimistic in the U.S. The U.S. is the heart of a global problem, the core of the problem. And U.S. financial and banking deregulation since the end of the 1990s is the proximate cause of the problem. And that is a process now that is going to put the U.S. into what I call 10 years of hell. It's going to be worse in some respects than the Great Depression of the 1930s for most Americans. And everything that the current administration and the previous administration have done about the problem is merely going to make it worse for the actual economy.
So now let's shift to Eastern Europe. Now you've written at great length about the drama that's unfolding there. So could you perhaps paint us a picture about the situation there at the moment and which countries are most affected?
The problem in Eastern Europe is if you will, a derivative problem of the problem of cheap credit coming out of Wall Street over the last 7 years. And as the Fed lowered its interest rates after 2002, partly to create this real estate bubble and to feed the Wall Street banks' securitization process, the interest rates worldwide came down, the European interest rates and so forth. So banks in Europe were able to borrow money very cheaply and lend it out to Eastern European countries that were in the European Union, like Poland or Hungary or the Czech Republic. I don't see it as the same kind of crisis as the derivatives-driven crisis in the U.S. banks, because there is a real housing deficit after 50 years or so of the controlled economy, command economy, under the Warsaw Pact Soviet Union era. And people do have jobs. This isn't derivative speculation off the books. This is simply normal banking loans. And what the EU governments have done in one form or another is to step in with IMF funds. I'm not a fan of the IMF in any way, but the purpose of the funds was to stabilize the currency so that it doesn't become a speculative target and make the crisis worse. I think for the moment it's quote unquote under control. It doesn't have the leverage potential that the American crisis has.
And Russia is currently in a similar situation, with rumours that many banks will soon go bust if more negotiation doesn't happen with the West sometime soon. So what do you think is the best option available to Russia?
Russia has to, and this is, I think, one thing that the current government and when Vladimir Putin was president, I think he very much tried to do, is to bring the crucial elements of a sovereign nation back under state control. That doesn't say going back to the era of central planning communism, but certainly to control your currency, to control your credit system. These are things that any sovereign nation should rightly have. And in terms of the banking crisis, perhaps there are some banks that would do better if they were nationalized. If the losses are too great, at least nationalized so that they could be then cleaned up from the toxic waste and the bad investments, and that the real economy comes out of this as the healthy factor and not pure financial speculation for the good of a few oligarchs at the expense of the Russian economy and the Russian people.
So how long do you think it's going to take before we see the end of this recession?
The point is we're at an epochal change. This is something that happens perhaps every 400 or 500 years. This isn't a once-in-a-decade recession that we're living through. And I call it in my new book, which was just released in German, the decline of the American century. This is a terminal decline, as you had with the British Empire after World War I. And it wouldn't matter if Jesus Christ were the President of the United States today. There would be nothing he could do to reverse that decline process. We would almost have to reorganize and start from scratch, because the cancer of this financial system has embedded itself so deeply that they've destroyed industrial technology in the United States. They've outsourced manufacturing over the past 25, 30 years to Asia, to Eastern Europe, all over the world. The American elite has rotted itself from inside out over the past 30, 40 years, since the early 70s. So Europe, including Russia, very much so including Russia, or let's say Eurasia. Eurasia is a vast continent which has every resource man could imagine for anything that we would want to build economically. It has the brain power, it has the scientific talents. We haven't totally destroyed that, as has been the case in the U.S. And that is all we need. It has the raw material. Russia has unlimited technology for unlimited resources of natural gas and oil. The Russian geology is light years ahead of American and Western geology, geophysics, let's say, because it is based on real earth science, real physics, and not on hocus pocus to hide the fact of how much oil the world has. So there is nothing that's lacking. The decision in Western Europe, in the European Union, is for many European elites, I know this from discussions here in Germany in the recent years, they have to make a choice, and they're schizophrenic about that choice right now. Either strengthen the Atlantic alliance with Washington and go down with the sinking Titanic called the American century, or carefully try to reorient the supertanker called the European Union and build bridges of cooperation with Russia above all, with China above all for economic markets and whatnot.
And what are your thoughts on the US President Barack Obama? Do you think he is the man to control this situation?
No. To my mind, and I said this in print a year before Barack Obama became president, the American power establishment, since the time at least of Abraham Lincoln, with the possible exception of John Kennedy, has never allowed any candidate to get near the White House who they don't totally control. And that we see that in the case of President Obama. So there is nothing that the Obama administration is doing to rock the boat. He is merely, if you will, a cosmetic change. What do you say? Old wine in new bottles, and that's Barack Obama. He's simply an attempt to deceive, to put the rest of the world off balance. But I think it's certainly wearing thin in the American public. They realize he hasn't done anything fundamental to improve their situation, and he has perhaps another 2 or 3 months before he becomes like George Bush, the most hated man in America, I think.
You touched upon George Bush there. Now, one of your books that you wrote about looks at the hidden history of oil and money and how that is the hidden cause.
He talked about multiple things there, and notice how he talked about the situation with Russia in the eastern part of Europe. Notice how he talked about commodities and the derivatives and the speculation and the debt situation. You notice how he talked about Europe being pushed into this conundrum where they either have to choose to go east with Russia and China, especially. What do we see there? The China-Russian-led Global South Bloc, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or what? The BRICS Plus, right? You see that? And or Europe chooses to get further entrenched with the sinking Titanic, which is America and the American century and go down with the ship. What is going on right now? Talk to me. What is going on right now? Europe is backing America with irrational policies, insane policies, lunatic policies against Russia at the benefit of really no one, but to the detriment of pretty much everyone, especially and specifically Europe and America. All right? And what did he say? It doesn't matter if Jesus Christ was president. You can't get out of this one. Not the situation that America now finds herself in. It doesn't matter. This is what I'm trying to tell you. All these rosy scenarios that everybody, sure, you would like it to be rosy, but the reality, sometimes you have to give a person a kick in the chops and let them know what is real. Because just stroking their ego sometimes will put them in a critical situation that causes the loss of family or the loss of their lives. So we have to be realists now because of the situation. But I want to go to something because he said some key words here. He talked about the Western system, especially America's economy, being total decline. Total means complete. All in all. Decline means decrease, reduce, get smaller, grow smaller, to lessen, to get less, right? To turn down, reject, brush aside, refuse, rebuff, spurn, disdain. This is what it is. Derivatives, according to the definition of it, is a speculative bet or guess or bet on investments. That's what it is. So you have bets on bets on bets on bets. You have a market where people don't do anything but place bets on bets on bets on bets. And the situation has grown to 2 to 4 quadrillion. Now, if we go by what the Western world is saying now, the global economy has grown and it's about $85 trillion. You can multiply the global economy multiple times and it still will not be enough to suffice the coming implosion of the derivative market alone. Not including all the other stuff, but the derivative markets. Woo! That's something, isn't it? So look, he said, this thing is apocal. Apocal means it is denoting the apex, or let's see. It means apocalyptic, describing or prophesying the complete destruction of the world or of a world. So what we're looking at is the decline of American dominance, the decline of the Western-led and dominated political, military, and financial system. And we are describing, or we're prophesying, that we are witnessing the complete destruction of an old world. Because that old world is now bumping heads with something new. And there's a longing for something new, something outside the scopes and reach of those people who have led the world for the last hundreds and hundreds of years. They have been parasitic in nature, and they have used slogans to mask their madness and their unquenchable thirst for power, blood, and rulership. We're now entering into a new phase of things. Now let's go back to something here on this article. It says, this is not a small problem. Remember that Mr. Engdahl kept talking about a housing crisis in America. Now, I want you to understand something. This was during Barack Obama's presidency, okay? He was talking about this. Now, if we are reaching a crescendo today, then it never stopped, right? If we are now reaching the summit of melee and chaos of the housing market, then that means that all they did was mask the symptoms. So if that is the case, and we know that there's been President Trump, we know that there has been President Biden, and we know that he was talking during President Obama's reign as the puppet at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If constant multiple recessions back to back, and the recessions endure more than 16 to 18 months, and we know for a fact that it has, because Engdahl was talking about this then we are not headed for a recession. We are not in a recession. We are not headed for a depression. We are in a depression. This is clear for anybody. But everybody seems to tap dance around this because they don't want you to see just how bad things really are. Because if you see just how bad things are, they are afraid that they will lose their financing and their backing from you. So they are exploiting you and your ignorance by and insulting your intelligence by constantly saying that we're in a recession or we're entering a recession or there will be a light or mild recession. When in reality, we've been in a depression since way back then. According to the definition and according to all of the stats that measures whether or not you're in a depression or a recession, and according to all of the qualifiers. So what we're trying to do is inform you of the reality of the situation so that you can make better preparations for yourself and for your loved ones. All of this rosy stuff, that's not going to fly in the midst of what's going on. And this is why America continues to push the world towards war. Because her rulership, I am and there is none other. I'm the king and you're the subject. All of that dynamic is changing. And she is looking like, I don't want to be a person among multiple people. I want to be the head honcho. And if I can't be the head honcho, then I'm willing to kill everybody. I'm willing to destroy everything. That's why she's stoking war. That's why she's talking up nuclear strikes. That's why she's changing her posture, deploying her aircraft carrier groups around the world. That is why. It is simple as that. When a person shows you who they are, what? Believe them. Okay? Now let's go further. It says, this is not a small problem, talking about the real estate thing and how the banks will catch it from this. Offices are sitting empty from coast to coast, and the total commercial real estate market in this country is currently valued at somewhere around $20 trillion. Let's go further. Let me slide down a little bit. It says, from Dallas and Minneapolis to New York and Los Angeles, offices sit vacant and underused, showing the staying power of the work from home era. But clear desks and quiet break rooms aren't just a headache for bosses eager to gather teams in person. Investors and regulators on high alert for signs of trouble in the financial system following recent bank failures are now homing in on the downturn in the $20 trillion U.S. commercial real estate market. Now, $20 trillion. According to America, her economy is $30 trillion. Wow. So that's just in the real estate, that's 2/3 of the American GDP. If we look at it in that term. So look further. The pandemic sparked a remote work revolution, and now we have a lot of office space that is simply not needed any longer. In fact, office vacancies in Manhattan are now at the highest level ever recorded. Now, what does that mean? That means that people who invested in buildings and retail spaces can no longer rent them out which means that they no longer have the revenue to service their debt on the loans that they took from the banks, which means that they will default. The buildings that they own will go into foreclosure, and the banks will go belly up. $20 trillion, I might add. Okay? So when we look at this situation, it is truly apocalyptic, as F. William Engdahl stated. And all while this is going on, while poverty is exploding, right? All while this is going on, the United States continues to send money abroad, money that she does not have, continues to invest in weapon systems instead of properly educating her people so that they can pull themselves out of the madness by their own bootstraps. She prefer you to be ignorant going into the fall than giving you what is needed to make it through the fall to rebuild. Insanity. Is that not right? So I just, when I tell you these things, it is just unreal how people don't see just how bad things are. It's amazing. Just how terrible things will become. As a matter of fact, I'm going to play something for you. Okay? I want you to listen to this.
And the last update for this morning is really painful because it's one more sign of the growing contrasts of American capitalism. As it declines, it becomes more and more unequal. That's why the tensions in our society are rising. That's why the social problems are getting worse. That's why the incompetence or inability of our leaders to cope is becoming so much more obvious. I want to share with you a study newly completed toward the end of last year, 2022, produced in and by the University of Southern California, USC, and in particular, the medical school there, known as the Keck, K-E-C-K, Keck Medical School. A study was undertaken of Los Angeles County in California, a study of its food insecurity problem. In other words, hunger. What is the problem of hunger? How many people are not able to get enough food to live a normal, healthy life? That is what they were studying. Why now? Because they knew already at the end of last year that in March of 2023, that's right, just a very small time ago, would be the last month that about 1.4 million people in Los Angeles County alone would no longer get their pandemic-era supplements in terms of funds for food, the SNAP program, or what we used to call food stamps. The eligibility for them was not renewed. Thank you, Mr. Biden, Democrats and Republicans. So the 1.4 people who receive these supplements won't. All the affected households will get at least $95 less per month to buy food than they used to, and some will get as much as $250 less per month to buy food. 37% of the poor in LA, those 1.4 who were getting food stamps of one kind or another, 37% of them, over a third of the poor, right, experienced food insecurity last year. In other words, they were poor enough that they didn't know whether they would have enough food at their next mealtime and often experienced insufficient food to get by. 33% of Black and Latino families versus 11% of white families experienced food insecurity. Let me stress, if you have that many people that are in trouble financially getting food stamps, and you have this number that are hungry, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people in one county, Los Angeles County, big county, but one county, are having trouble with their food. 40% of food insecure households included children. If you know anything about nutrition and the human body, you'll know that children suffer all kinds of long-term difficulty if they're not given enough food. The immorality of this, I can't even begin to touch it. The absurdity in a country as wealthy as ours, which just committed over $100 billion to a war in another country, but cannot deal with the people who haven't enough food. Those of you who take morality or ethics seriously, I'll leave to you finding some way to justify something as outrageous as all of this. I'm an economist, so I want to comment on the irrationality of a system like this. You don't feed people enough, you make every other physical, medical, mental health problem worse. Everybody knows that. Countless statistics confirm it. We are going to create an entire generation of people presenting all kinds of physical and mental health problems, costing this society vast amounts of money to give them the medical care they'll try to get for the diseases we could have made less serious or avoided had we dealt with the problem of hunger when they were kids. Come on. It's immoral, it's irrational, and it's a financial waste. The cost of keeping rich people rich is becoming unbearable in this declining capitalist system.
Again, just to hammer this home before we go off the air, I just want to hammer this home. She can find money for wars, for weapons, for research on weapons and wars, and all of these institutes for the study of war, right? But for the people whom she claimed to protect and serve, she can find little to no money. How is that national security at its finest? Huh? I just want you to listen to this, and then after this, we'll close out. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to you during the chat, but I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. And it's just these issues that hit home to me that I wanted to completely focus on this. I love every one of you that support the channel and everything. But let's go into this real quick, okay?
If you look domestically at the U.S., you have a crumbling infrastructure, you have massive amounts of homelessness, staggering, unprecedented numbers of homeless people in every major city in the United States, and the government does absolutely nothing. There's increased attacks against the homeless from people. It's a very divisive topic. Cities are there are homeless on nearly every block in cities like Los Angeles, Seattle, Vancouver in Canada. They're everywhere. Boston, you can't find a city that doesn't have it, and the government does nothing. They instead send billions of dollars in weapons and training to Ukraine in a futile proxy war that has already failed. The U.S. will eventually try to spin it as a victory because they try to spin everything as a victory. The era of U.S. supremacy is waning. If it's not already over, really. And the saber rattling directed against Iran, against China, and certainly this proxy war against Russia rings more and more hollow because the U.S. has nothing to back it up. It is a country in crisis, essentially, economically and domestically. It's in a crisis spiritually. It's the end of the American empire, the end of Pax Americana. And this deployment is a typical Biden administration move. It's reckless. This submarine has what they call tactical nukes, mini nukes, which there are many at the Pentagon think are perfectly employable, that it would be, a reasonable thing to use tactical nuclear weapons. This all speaks to an increasingly unhinged administration. U.S. leadership is just irrational.
Need I say more? You heard it first here on Wednesday Night News, and we see for ourselves that America has really become a nation in crisis. On that note, we go out the same way we always come in, with the love that God gave to us to give to you. Know that we love you more than life if you love truth. But God, the supreme being, will always love you best. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous, because that is what you will need to get out of this. And on that note, I got to say it always with my closing statement. Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces.